Very rarely does a piece of media bring me to tears, let alone a Pokemon game and a fan-made one at that. But Pokemon Reborn did just that. Let me share with you the story of Corey. When we're first introduced to Corey, he's just an unnamed doctor treating the wounds of victims of the train crash that had just happened moments ago. For free, mind you, American medical system could never. He comes off as a fairly stern and cynical gentleman, lecturing a kid for complaining of his pain, telling you to wait in line, but nothing he says is rude. In fact, he generally seems calm given the stress you can imagine a doctor is going through when a train just crashed and they gotta help. You then optionally meet him a couple more times, seeing him giving care to people, and actually at one point you're tasked with getting him back some medicine that was stolen from him, as he's generally working in slums, so lots of mans are desperate for medicine and some steal it. These occurrences at first are all optional, though pretty hard to not see if you're talking to, well, anyone, and gives us our basis for understanding Corey as a fairly jaded but kind-hearted doctor. Some of his lines are a little bit edgy though, like, "Hope is weakness. It's an illusion meant to sugarcoat this sickening reality." Which, at first, might sound overly edgy, but by this point in the game, we spend a few hours seeing just how brutal the city really is. We see Reborn City as this gross, dreary place. The water's polluted, people are getting sick, robbed, and like in most games, there's an evil team doing bad stuff. Though in Reborn, it's more like blatant gang violence and terrorism, so a bit more extreme than usual. We also meet his daughter Heather, where at first he wants us to avoid her, seemingly for her safety, and then eventually for plot reasons she's helping us against the evil team. And strangely, Corey then appears and chastises her and us, telling her she's gotta stay at home and not be fighting. She then complains a little bit about family stuff with him, and we learn from this exchange that her mother, Corey's wife, is dead, and he doesn't really talk much about her to his daughter, and apparently he's super pissed she's been wearing his wife's ring. So we can kinda understand him to an extent. The city sucks, his relationship with his daughter is rough, and his wife is dead. However, it really doesn't prepare you for what we see next, as we see a big billboard that says like and subscribe now, but seriously, what we aren't prepared for is meeting Corey's seeming alter ego of Borealis, which at least to me was pretty obviously Corey. Borealis is a member of this region's evil team, Team Meteor, and we meet him beating one of our rivals and making it obvious it's him, as he's probably the most edgy recurring character at this point in the game, and his diction is very reminiscent of him. This now leaves us dazed, as we're left wondering why this doctor that seemed kind, albeit a bit edgy, is allying himself with the evil team that's hurting the mans he's been shown trying to help, and that he seems so scared of for his daughter's sake. We don't really get answers about Corey until we meet him again as Borealis, during a mission where we're trying to stop Team Meteor's mutated Tangrowth that's been destroying parts of the city. We also happen to have allies with us, including Heather. During the fight, one of Team Meteor's grunts hurts her, and in a moment of distress, Corey sends out his Crobat to get her to safety, leaving Corey in a fairly bad spot as 1, Team Meteor gets angry at him for saving someone they consider an enemy, and 2, we're obviously not thrilled either, since Corey's part of the terrorist group that's been attacking the city. After we manage to defeat the mutant Tangrowth, Corey is taken into custody. From here, what happens depends slightly on your previous actions, since Pokemon Reborn actually changes dialogue and outcomes based on your choices, which is really cool. But for some quick context, a lot of police officers had gone missing, they were trapped in damaged buildings and streets by the Tangrowth's destruction, and you have a side quest to find them all, and if you do, you're rewarded with a Growlithe from the police, and the officers show up with you to confront Corey, which changes the way the scene plays out a little bit. The difference here, though, is pretty minor story-wise. You just get more insight into Corey's situation. He explains that his wife was killed by a Team Meteor admin because they wanted a ring he had given her, as it apparently holds immense importance, and Corey ends up being forced to join Team Meteor to protect himself, Heather, and the ring. The grief from losing his wife and the harshness of the world around him pushed him into this emotional numbness. This coldness carried over into how he raised his daughter, which explains why she really dislikes him and ends up running off after learning about his involvement with Team Meteor, which honestly is pretty reasonable from her perspective. Now we're left with a man who's lost everything, and we're left to wonder what he's supposed to do. Obviously, we assume maybe he can join us and we keep him safe since he seems chill enough and we are the main character. But then we get this optional scene. He's standing on a bridge, throwing away all his Pokemon. They clearly don't want to leave him, which makes it even more heartbreaking. We're left wondering what he's planning, but we don't wonder for long. Corey, after talking to us a bit more, decides to jump off the bridge, landing right in front of many onlookers, including some young characters we know, like Shelly, who's not even a teen and witnessing this. This was extremely tragic, seeing the slow decline of a character that was probably redeemable given his seeming innate care for helping others. Feels like it's almost our fault, as frankly maybe it was obvious given his behavior on the bridge he was about to jump. Why didn't we do something? Surely he could come with us. We just beat Team Meteor and possibly long term we could help repair his relationship with Heather. But now that's all not possible. We also feel deep sympathy for his daughter and the young people like Shelley that had to witness his brutal demise jumping off the bridge. But although this was the end of his story, this is just the beginning of ours. See, although this is incredibly sad, we didn't have that much time with Corey, so his actions might, to some players, be interpreted as irrational and selfish, and honestly it's easy to be more on the side of his daughter. But Reborn doesn't just show us the sadness of a man losing it all and ending his life, it makes us ask, what happens to those they leave behind? After this moment, the game goes on and we have a lot of time to sit with what's happened, but it does eventually fade as characters rarely talk about Corey after this, and there's so many pressing matters like dealing with Team Meteor. It's easy for it to be forgotten, especially if you weren't emotionally impacted. But then we start coming across Pokemon in the world, which all almost seem to be lost, like this scrub we found fairly close to the bridge, just staring off into the water longingly. All his Pokemon recognize us and are willing to come with us, but it makes us ask, how long have they just been sitting alone? Was this scrub hoping Corey would come again? When we know he'll never be able to. These encounters are scattered throughout the main game, over time cementing just how Corey's death has affected them, something that a lot of other games and media may have just left at the moment they are thrown away. This is only furthered by her relationship with Heather as she proves to be a really powerful and kind ally, though due to her young age she gets into some trouble later in the story, as we end up at an orphanage due to many important gym leaders also happening to be kids who are either orphans or abandoned. However, the orphanage has a fairly obviously abusive owner named Sigmund that is using electroshock therapy on many of the children if they have any emotional problems. Sigmund also eventually joins Team Meteor, and in a scene where we're talking with Heather, who seemingly feels okay in spite of what's happened with her father, Sigmund grabs her and pulls her to the orphanage, and we can't manage to stop him in time. We rush to help her and fight through his orphanage, but by the time we get up and force her to be released, she's already been shocked by the electivire he has, and she doesn't want to speak to anyone, seeming traumatized by the situation. If Corey was still around, maybe he could have helped her, but now she's just gone through two different traumas, and it rests on everyone else to help her through it. And even with us saving her, she still needs someone to adopt and take care of her given her very young age, so eventually she gets adopted by a fellow named Blake. Unfortunately, Blake is also a member of Team Meteor, and we learn quite a bit about him as the story progresses, where he mostly just seems like a douchebag and isn't quite that evil, just kinda a jerk. Though he does carry out Team Meteor's agenda of effectively starving an entire city by withholding their food. Heather, however, secretly distributes this food without Blake's knowledge, leading to her being called the guardian angel of the city, almost as though she's providing to the city what her dad couldn't provide to her. Blake eventually does find out she's been doing this, however, and locks her in a jail cell, though not for long as we come again to save her and help her get her mother's ring back that had been stolen. Now after this, we mostly have peace with her. Near the end of the game, she actually becomes a de facto Elite Four member, taking her mom's place, and once we beat Team Meteor, everything seems generally alright for her. And although Reborn does offer us peace for the moment, it is impressive how from this one character we didn't get to know for long, we get these extremely emotional moments. It's hard to not feel a deep emotional connection to Heather and Corey's Pokemon, wishing them the best and rooting heavily for them. But Reborn has one more moment, which is what truly made me cry. See, in the postgame we have access to getting every legendary, and each has their own little mission, some of which are pretty simple and some of which are beautifully written. See, here we find a sick Celebi and are trying to cure it, but due to Celebi's ability to move through time, we end up sporadically going through time due to its sickness, and end up meeting many characters. This is very emotional as we first see the father of one of the main antagonists, and he's such a nice guy. It's honestly shocking that such a kind man raised someone who'd go on to cause so much of Reborn's suffering. But this is just the appetizer, as later we time travel again, thinking we may be in the future. We see a character that looks just like an older Heather, so we assume it's her at first, but it becomes quickly revealed it's Heather's mum, Elena. This at first is obviously a bit emotional as we know she dies and Corey dies, but it's easy to look past at first as just being another fun battle and a place and time we get to visit. But once we beat her and talk to her a bit more, she starts going on about Corey. We sit there listening to all this, all her hopes and dreams for Corey, her excitement at their life together and his love for his Crobat, but we know it all comes crashing down.
Some people are so brilliant they take to battle like a fish to water. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Before long, Corey will be champion.
This was the moment that made me cry. Even writing this script, it brings a tear to my eye. This knowledge of dreams not achieved, love lost, and the crushing weight of depression over the years is harsh enough. But when you see where it started, with a loving wife, a future that seemed promising, it's harsh. This is the beauty of Pokemon Reborn's writing. A character that many stories would just leave as a single tear-jerking suicide, Reborn turns into a long, reoccurring character, in spite of them not being alive, whose actions in life really exists, and isn't there just as a means to an end of making the audience a little sad and their daughter have a character arc. But the plot doesn't just leave us crying and suffering. To end the Celebi quest, we go to the future and meet Heather again, looking shockingly like her mom, and she overall seems to be in good health and state. And we get to meet Shelly aged up as well, and she's figured out that we traveled to time and collected the relic stones we apparently need to heal Celebi, which is a beautiful end to the story. We see that although at first the hope of Alina was lost, eventually their characters, harmed by the trauma of that time, managed to make it out and become amazing people. Overall, this writing was shocking and caught me by complete surprise, as I just thought Corey was going to be left as a one-off death without much exploration, especially not so far after. But that's Pokemon Reborn for you. I hope you enjoyed this video. This is my first time doing a plot analysis or emotional type review, so any feedback is appreciated. I hope you have a nice day.